This is a follow-up video to my introductory guide to Eclipse that was made, oh god, over a year ago? Well, better late than never, right? First off, this video is intended for those who have grown their accounts enough to have a need, desire, and resources to invest into a team to maximize their Ether income from Eclipse. Membership in the 60 Plus Club is earned and there is a cost, but it's an investment in your future. First, let's go over the best options for DPS you'll need. Regardless of which DPS you choose, the core team for any Eclipse is going to be Glen Weiss and Reinhardtna. They are the backbone of every good Eclipse team, and their investment matters. You'll need to make sure to invest in their UTs, specifically both their UT4s, and unique weapons, specifically on Glen Weiss. Soul weapon investment can also be valuable, especially for Reinhardtna, since the attack boost provides. You want to make sure to have S3 cooldown for Reinhardtna to increase the uptime of her S3 and to provide CDR to the team. Glen Weiss's TM lines will vary based on your survival strategy. Method 1, and the most recommended strategy, is the Super Tank strategy. This strategy has proven to be the most successful in Eclipse going to high waves. It requires you to gear Glen Weiss for extreme levels of defense, requiring 250k and higher, sometimes upwards even 400,000 of both defenses, and wearing a Galgoria set to increase overall defensive capability with the TM lines of defense plus 50%, attack minus 20%. This makes Glen ridiculously tanky to the point that she can actually just straight up tank even the high level Eclipse enemies. In order to survive that damage, though, you will not be able to heal, so we'll be relying on Fallen Frey's extremely powerful shield. You'll need to slot for attack, shield increases, and you can also go with 5% attack over 15 waves to give Fallen Frey a 75% attack increase to make her shield even stronger. This strategy involves you being able to endure enemies for a prolonged period of time, giving you the largest window to deal damage and be able to absorb some of the stray skills that can get off. It is not completely invulnerable though. Your backline is still subject to some AoEs being able to destroy them, so be cautious. Method 2 involves going for maximizing your damage output and relying on the Ring of Spirit Morph to survive. Ring of Spirit Morph does have a limit though, as you are, even at 5-star, only up to 9 seconds. Once those 9 seconds expire, you are likely to lose Glen Weiss and then the rest of your team shortly after. By running this strategy, instead of Fallen Frey, you will go with Mei. By utilizing Mei, you're able to obtain much higher damage output and allows you to more successfully kill enemies in those 9 seconds. But the limit is that you have up to those 9 seconds. Once those 9 seconds run out, you are doomed. The Super Tank strategy is able to survive longer than the 9 seconds, hence the preference towards Method 1 over Method 2. If you already have a high star Morph Ring, you are welcome to use this strategy though, as it has proven successful and can even get up to wave 82, as I've successfully done myself. By using the Morph Ring on the tank though, you are reducing the amount of support artifacts in the team, but you can make up this by running TM lines that are more offensive oriented, such as attack and crit damage auras or 2.5% damage auras to the party. Glen Weiss will still need to be slotted with some defense and block, as she does need to be able to survive the earlier waves, but she will have Mei's healing to keep her alive before you get to the boss waves. Rebel Klaus and the Twin team does require specialized comps, and we'll go over them specifically when I talk about the individual teams in more detail. Do know that they are not using the previous strategy with Mei and Fallen Frey, but they can be using those strategies, such as the Rapine team will use the Morph Ring, and Rebel Klaus's team will actually use neither strategy, instead opting for the Mediana strategy. There's also a third option that has been proven to be successful with some melee DPS recently. The method is an older method that was previously used but was dropped for a while, but is starting to have a bit of a resurgence. This method is referred to as the Death Protection method, hereby referred to Method 3. With a melee DPS, it's possible to use Mediana or Lavril to provide 100% uptime with their Death Protection skills, either using both of them or using one with the appropriate skill cooldown TM gear. In Mediana's case, it would be skill 3, for Lavril it would be skill 2. What this does is it allows you to free up your tank slot, and you can run double supports to maximize damage output. Since your DPS now effectively doubles as your invincible tank, you only have to worry about damage output and kill the enemy before they have a chance to kill your backline. This method is fairly risky, and there's a lot of trouble that can come up, especially with Child of Hellfire. If she dispels your DPS, you will instantly kill them. But otherwise, this method has proven to be successful lately. Here is a tier list of the available best DPS for Eclipse. These are the top 10 known DPS at the time of this video. Selene, current Queen of Eclipse, able to store up arrows from S2 in advance before getting to highways, effectively building damage early in the run to be released later. UT2 and Treasure Hunt Capsule are highly recommended. Balancing cooldowns and arrow use with amps requires constant planning. Talicia, right behind Selene, her damage output is incredible and her ease of use is second to none. Once her S3 has been cast 10 times, you can stay in red mode and spam S1 till the cows come home. She brings a ton of CC, has nearly no mana cost. The downside, she's an NPC, and NPC Neoq weapons still require a lot of work, but they are now becoming easier thanks to the revamped challenge raid rewards. Rapine and Rahit requires you to drop the second support in order to have Rahit in the party, but he brings good amps, some needed CC, and allows the duo combo attack to kill bosses. Requires investment in both Rapine and Rahit for max effect, and you'll only have Rayhartna as your only backline support. Alternative, Rahit can be used as a tank to run a second support, but it is not recommended. Epis is still a strong DPS in Eclipse, requires lower investment than most, still a 10-star A220 recommended, but she is able to get into wave 60 plus before even A2. She gets up to 2 million free attack, has infinite mana, double cooldown speed, all thanks to her S4 passive and the S4 dark perk. She's also fairly easy to use, requiring you only to S2 and to S1 to kill most bosses as you move up. Gremory, able to blow up bosses with her S1. Eventually though, the damage from her single S1 won't be enough and you will have to cast all her skills and get a second S1 off. At this point, getting off your combo in time becomes more difficult. A strong Gremory can go far and starts out easy so long as she's one-shotting, but once she can't, she becomes more complex to play. Rebel Klaus, with his access to complete defense ignore, his damage never falls off, thus he's a strong DPS here in Eclipse. But he is cleaved by several of the bosses. To make the most of Rebel Klaus, you need to either run Morphring on Rebel Klaus or bring Mediana. I strongly recommend you go the Mediana route. This requires you to have access to 100% uptime from Mediana's S3, but does free up an accessory slot on your tank. So long as Glenweiss has the second highest attack next to Rebel Klaus, both Glenweiss and Rebel Klaus will be targeted by the double S3 light targeting, thus effectively making them immortal. Mediana also brings fairly strong attack buffing and some nice amp that's much needed. The following 4 characters are fairly strong in Eclipse and are able to get far, but they are not recommended to be built exclusively for Eclipse. If you already have them built, feel free to use them, or if you're wanting to build them for other content, go ahead and build them and you can use them for Eclipse as well. But it is recommended if you're wanting to get the most out of Eclipse to stick to the 6 listed above. So rounding out the tier list for our B tier is Glady, Mirian, Lucikiel, and Krisha. Alright, I am joined by Linkus here. He's going to tell me a bit about Talicia and Eclipse and why Talicia is so successful.
Yeah, hello, I want to sell you that pretty good character. Okay. So sell me on Talisha as far as running her in Eclipse. What makes Talisha so successful in Eclipse?
So Talisha has a lot of skills, as you know. Like you can change the skills from blue to red, and her main skill we will use in Eclipse is the red S1, which is a skill which does ignore death to, of course, bosses, and this is what most of the time is the most best thing using. Same goes for Celine or Gramarye or any other character which is good in Eclipse.
Mhm.
The main part, which also if you just look at her as 4, is that she stacks per wave. She has her as 4 stacking per wave, and you have her as 3 stacking if you use it very often. So this already gives her a lot of increased damage per wave, increased damage over time, and that makes her much stronger at the later waves.
Yeah, which is when you
The
really
thing,
need it.
yeah, and the thing with her is you have 2 unique treasures, or probably 1 unique treasure when you look at her, which you normally say, okay, I want to build that one. That's the S4. People think to you, okay, that increased my stack, so that makes sense because I have more waves. But that one is actually not, by theory, it's great, like if you think about it. But then if you use it in Eclipse, you will notice I need to spam my S1, and S1 has 7% or something like that one cooldown.
Hmm.
If I remember that call 6 seconds,
Correct.
and you're not always one-shotting that, and 6 seconds to wait for my Nexus one, that's a little bit too much. So what I would suggest is going for UT1, that reduces your cooldown on 5-step by 2.5 seconds, and you can spam it every 3.5 seconds.
Right. And then also when the
The
soul weapon's active, because the cooldown's shorter, you're able
Yeah,
to get more cast off during the soul weapon as well.
the thing is we have to, of course, then think about, okay, how high do I have to invest in her? Since her A2, if you reach A2, then you only get the reduced cooldown for your skills, so you also have to consider that one, that as A2 would be nice, but I still believe you could do it with a little bit less investment. If you time it right, because then the second thing comes in when using Talisha is her S1 can stun, and if you have a skill which you can spam every 3.5 seconds, which also stuns your enemy, this gives you whole more options, especially using in your main team, with either using Mei or Fallen Frey, but then also Glenvis and Rehartna, which both has pretty strong stuns. You can time these things much easier, and it's not even hard to play her, right? If you start Talisha running, you just click 11 times on S3, then you stack everything you have to stack manually, and then you're done basically. Then you just have to spam the Redis one. Not really that interesting thing to do.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a testament to just how easy she is to play compared to every other Eclipse
Right.
hero. I mean, Gramarye kind of starts the same way, at least in the earlier waves, where she's able to one-shot enemies with just her S1. But once she gets to the point of enemies can't be one-shotted, she has to go through some fairly complex rotations in order to get her
Yeah.
damage out.
Like she either has to start with S3 and then use S1 to get more amp bonus from S3, or def yeah, amp, it's basically amp.
Or
And
eventually she starts up to casting more than one S1, which means she needs to rotate through all the skills and then do it
yeah,
again.
and characters like that one, or Celine, Gramarye, they don't even have really good stuns. Like they nearly have no stuns actually, just S2 on Gramarye, which is not really stunning. This is where Talisha just have much easier thing. You can stun them at the start and then also stun them with later with your other skills, just beautiful. And the only bad thing you have, like every character has some bad things, right? Gramarye is pretty slow on her skills, even when they buffed her with 500% base attack speed. She's still a little bit low, and she's very mana hungry.
Yeah,
Celine can, yeah. That's also cool with Talisha. You have the T5 Dark, reducing all of your skills mana cost by 1. But we come to that one later, since it's cool, but you don't really have to use it. But,
yeah, I think
like,
the highest successful team actually doesn't run that perk specifically,
yeah,
but it is an option if you're building her for the first time.
yeah, it also depends on your Lulu's necklace. Like if you have a very high Lulu's necklace, you get also more mana per second.
Yeah.
Which is also the item I would use on her. I tried with Capsule, but at the end, it resulted in you needing probably one more S1. You can still use her on Capsule if you just don't have Lewis Necklace on High Star. Like Capsule is also not a bad thing.
Yeah, I would wager on
Yeah,
Lulu's side, which gives her just a lot more damage potential than
Of course,
Celine
yeah.
because of the difference in damage between the two artifacts.
But coming back to the bad things, like Celine, for example, could run out of arrows, but mostly are not the thing. It depends, of course, on your team. Talisha has one thing where you really have to watch out, and that is her soul weapon. If you need to recharge it, as long as the soul weapon is active, you're probably so safe because you just can spam your S1 much more often than normal, stunning more, doing more damage, have no problems. But if it runs out, you have to really wait for your Reheartener S3 to resetting that one. That's the only thing you really have to watch out. Stunning is pretty easy, but watch out your S3 on Reheartener. Just don't use it if it's active after you need to use the soul weapon.
Yeah, wow. It's like when I saw your video of Talisha getting to 85. I knew some others did, but like seeing your video specifically on it, because the other one I saw was just like screenshots and stuff, but like actually seeing it being played out. One, it just looks really really easy just because the S1 spam. And another thing to point out, and I think this is more an argument for the UT1, like you've been suggesting on her, is that once you knock an enemy down, they take increased damage. And if you have a 6-second cooldown or S1, well, the enemies are knocked down for only 5 seconds, so you won't be able to get an S1 off while they're knocked down. Whereas with UT1, you are able to get an S1 while they're down and deal the extra damage. So, yeah, just all the more reason why UT1 is the clear winner here for Eclipse. And I think in other content, it's actually pretty good as well. But I know UT4 was the popular one before her update, but I think now with her rework, kind of thinking it might not be.
UT1 I think is just too strong. Also, there are different options how to use her. Like if I look at Celine playing, I always see them on not really loving Mei, but more often using Fallen Fray. On Talisha, I never tried Fallen Fray, but I think both are pretty strong, and probably Fallen Fray will overtake her. So I would just build her the normal team, main team you have, plus Fallen Fray or Mei, depends on what you have invested. Probably if you're starting to do or want to do 60 plus, you have Fallen Fray more in build, so just go for that one, and it's just fine, right?
Yeah, and that is a testament for both Celine and Talisha, I'd say, is that they have the option to go with either tank strategy. They can either go with a super tank or they can go with a morph ring tank.
Yeah, and if you now think, okay, Talisha is an NPC character, and from what we saw from today, or when we record that, Celine is still a better one in times of damage. But overall, I would say Talisha has more potential to even go higher because of her free stats and free debuffs and all she got. Even if she costs more, when we now think about these tactic you already said, this super strong Fallen Fray shield tactic. Talisha on her unique weapon can reduce attack, and plus Heart of Abyss, you can already decrease her attack with 45% just freely by just entering the stage and attacking them one time, which also makes Talisha much more stronger and theoretically better than any other character in Eclipse.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. The highest Talisha is not as invested as the highest Celine, and the fact that she's right there on her doorstep definitely points to they're going to be, I'd say they're equal, and that Talisha may actually have the edge. And this is coming from the perspective of a Celine user. I would say that Talisha is probably the stronger of the two. Now, of course, that does come with the caveat that she is an NPC hero, but... Yeah. Due to the changes in challenge rate, I'd say if with the additions of the increased artifacts for event artifact fragments and then also the NPC unique weapons, I think building for Eclipse right now has never been better.
Absolutely, yeah. We're getting so much of them every.
Yeah, rather you're going Lulu's necklace or capsule, you now have a constant source of event artifact frags, and then for NPC unique weapons, rather you're going with a Morphring strat and you want to build up May, or if you want to build Talisha and then go with Fallen Frey, you have access to the NPC unique weapons to build them.
Yeah, they're even selling them on, of course, for real money, even much cheaper than they did before. This is just a sign by NPC getting a little bit easier to access them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm on the free-to-play side of things, generally speaking.
It was just like an overall...
No, that's true. So, like, for newer players who just started the game like this year, who don't have like the 3 years of investment like I have backing my account, which I'm not going to deny, it gives me a huge advantage. Like the fact that I'm this well built at this point definitely means that I don't have to spend as much money, and that's also an argument for building into Eclipse, is that think of all the money you would be saving if you were having to buy ethers for everybody.
Absolutely, yes.
So
and Talisha's not like any like for example Apis. You could still, or she's simply like Gremory, where you can use her also in other content. You can use her in your TM raids. You could possibly use her in Skytribe. So this is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, she's definitely really effective in Sky Trial. I personally use her there. I've seen her do all 3 TM raids. I know Exaria was using her for Ascalon and Siegfried, and runs her with other DPS, of course, in Galgoria. And she's effective in all 3 TM raids, hands down. Like, there's no question about that, in my opinion. And there's even videos, if you've seen them, where Talishas have done Big Shack 9 and everything now too. So she's pretty much able to tackle anything. Her kit is just so just has so much in it. Just between
a little bit overloaded, yeah.
Yeah, between her damage, her free amp, her free attack, the heals, mana recovery, like she has and then just the free stats in general, just the attack and non-hero damage. She's able to tackle most content, and I think people have her very much underrated. Now, she of course isn't very good in PvP, but
Gremory's a little bit better there.
Yeah, but in PvE, I think Talisha's honestly underrated. Is probably actually one of the strongest NPC heroes between the available ones right now.
But I get it, like, if people already have something like Gremory, they think, like, why should I invest into an NPC character like that one? But this is just a reason why they won't do it, but I still think it's pretty worth it to build her.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's going to be using what you have, and then some players that view this video, I think, will consider, hey, you know, Celine and Talisha go really far, and I really want access to that high-end ether, and I have the resources to use.
Yeah. And the easiest way, even like the gameplay, you don't have, like, people normally don't reset the runs, and I think Talisha gives you a more stable run overall than Celine. Like, I played Celine not that much often. I played some accounts, and it was a big difference when playing Talisha.
Yeah, I've had to do a good number of resets on some runs. I think my record was 8 resets. And then I still settled for 74 after 8 resets. Okay. I'm just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore today. Just because just sometimes the bosses just don't want to cooperate with you. But Talisha definitely takes a lot of that out, though, because with those knockdowns, like, it actually forces the bosses to cooperate.
Yeah, sometimes I go to Child of Hellfire and just pressing my first one and see, oh, it's already stunned. Alright, no problem.
Yeah, the fear is, though, whenever they get up from the knockdown, are they going to just instantly skill as soon as they stand up?
That's true, but that's where you really have the soul weapon. Having your, even getting sometimes 2 as once before they even stand up again. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Lakis, I appreciate the information you've given as far as Talisha. Was there any other details you wanted to share?
That's basically it, right? Just try to spam your S1. Don't forget to stack your S3, and don't forget you also get crit damage from the soul weapon. So it's
Yep.
beautiful.
It's great. Yep. Thanks for the information, Linkus. Thanks for joining. I'm sure my viewers will appreciate the information. I hope you swayed some of them to invest in Delicia.
I hope so. Yeah.
Have a good day.
All right. See you.
Alright, well, let's talk about Celine's. Celine is my main, so I will not be interviewing someone for this. I will actually just give my first-hand experience. Celine is extremely strong in Eclipse, is currently the highest contender for Eclipse, just barely above Talisha, though I do expect that gap to be shortened. I do expect Talisha to be equal, if not possibly even higher than Celine. Celine's usefulness in other content does vary. She is pretty good in stuff like Galgoria, and she is functional in Siegfried. She's able to do Ascalon, but it requires manual play, as you have to abuse her S2 arrows to really destroy the boss. So she's not really recommended there. She's not all that good in World Boss 2, so she has some flaws. She's a good all-rounder, but she's not good in all content. She's not especially good in Arena. She does struggle in content like Otherworldly Shakma, and so on. So it's not necessarily recommended to build her with the intent to use her in other content. If you are going to build Celine, it would most likely be because you're looking to get the most out of Eclipse. With using Celine in Eclipse, she does require UT that's normally not used. Now, in most content, Celine should be using her UT4. In Eclipse, you are going to be using her UT2. The reason why is that the overwhelming majority of your damage output on the later waves is going to be strictly from your S2 defense ignore. And to maximize the damage output of that defense ignore, you actually get the most out of running UT2. Additionally, you're no longer in Eclipse, you're not taking S4 Light, so you're not getting the extra 2 stacks of her S4, which gives you the extra 200 crit. And you're also missing on the extra 2 stacks of non-hero damage that would be coming from UT2. Or sorry, from UT4. So the damage output from UT2 pulls even further ahead. You'll be using S4 Dark and Eclipse to maximize your boss damage output after you've cleared 10 waves. And with Celine, a lot of your play is building up as many arrows as possible. I do feel that Celine is basically restricted to Treasure Hunt Capsule. She can use Lulu's until you get a capsule. But you should be building Capsule to get the most out of her. Your goal is to build as many arrows in the early part of Eclipse as possible, so that way you have enough arrows to get through the later waves, as it does require a lot of UT2 arrows to take out enemies. Celine's damage output is fairly high. For the mana cost that you spend, spending 1 mana for S2 does provide you with 5 defense ignoring arrows, so the damage for that 1 mana is actually higher than other characters, but she does have to spend 3 mana in order to unload 12 arrows at once with her S1. So that can be a bit mana prohibitive, so you do need to keep an eye on your mana usage, keep her mana high. That's where characters like Rehardna become extremely helpful with her S3. Your goal, again, you want to build as many arrows. As you get into later waves, you will be using setups to unload your arrows to drop bosses quickly, especially Child of Hellfire, as she is the most notorious run-ender for Celine, as well as Skavir. So you want to save your soul weapon specifically for dealing with them. If you're using method 1, if you're using the super tank strategy with a large Fallen Frey shield, it is possible to tank the other bosses almost entirely, just through virtue of just Fallen Frey's shield being big enough. In fact, there is a video of a Korean player who fully tanks Dolahan, the level 86 Dolahan, nearly to timer and never takes a single point of damage because the entire time Fallen Frey shield just never breaks. So, and the the Korean player in that instance is using the time of that fight to build up arrows, make sure all the soul weapons are ready, because after Dullahan is Child of Hellfire and he needs to kill her quickly. So you do have to play around that strategy. It is recommended to go with the super tank strategy. I personally am using method 2, the Morphring strategy, still with Mei for increased damage output. But you really feel those 9 seconds. 9 seconds is a crunch. And yes, Selene can deliver a lot of damage on demand, but she also needs time to rebuild that damage by stacking more arrows. So if you're constantly doing the Morphring strategy, you're constantly using S1s to kill enemies, you don't have time to build arrows anymore, you're just losing arrows. So Selene will run out of steam. So it is recommended definitely to go with the method 1. So build around that with Fallen Frey. If you have a high star Morphring and you haven't invested Mei, you can go ahead and use method 2 for the meantime. In fact, you can probably get well up to 70 just on Morphring and Mei in most cases. But if you want to get into the higher end, like I've gone into 82 with the Morphring strategy, and it's feeling like it's kind of hard to go much further than that using the strategy. So I would steer players towards going with the super tank strategy. This is my sales pitch for Selene. I mean, Selene just overall has been a really good hero ever since I've invested in her nearly 3 years ago. She's been able to do most content. She does struggle in content, but she's still always been a fairly good generalist. So do keep that in mind. For newer players, I wouldn't necessarily recommend her though, just because of the fact that she can't do her own trial successfully. So do look for building a hero who can do Sky Trial for you if you plan to invest in Selene. So that's it. We'll go. I have some more interviews with some other players, and we'll incorporate that into the video. So enjoy listening for other heroes. So I have with me the Left Ear from the NA server. He is a known player for using Gremory and Eclipse, and he's going to tell us some information about using Gremory. So, Lefty, if you could you tell me how Gremory starts out in Eclipse and how her style changes as she progresses further in Eclipse?
Yeah, there, Vermilion. And thanks for having me. And good question. So, with Gremory on how her playstyle is in Eclipse is that she's a very straightforward hero for Eclipse. She's very friendly. Her style of play is literally just press S1. Her damage from her S1 is quite insane ever since her buff, and she's able to one-shot bosses, and she's able to use her S3 to kill the mobs when using her.
Now, as you get further in Eclipse, though, eventually that S1's no longer going to one-shot bosses. At that point, I believe Gremory has to change her skill rotation and style a bit.
Excellent. So yeah, so later on the later ends of Eclipse, so I'm talking about 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus. She's gonna run into a situation where she cannot one shot these bosses. So how I like to play it is that you're gonna go ahead and use the generic ideal comp for her, which is you're gonna use Reinhardt, Glenwiz. If you have Fallen Frey, then we can use Fallen Frey. If not, we can go ahead and use Mei. I can go ahead and get that in a little bit, and obviously you go ahead and use Gremory. With how she's played in the higher ends of Eclipse, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna S1, and this will come from experience where you will find out that, hey, I cannot S1 to one shot kill these bosses. So what should I do? Depending on what wave you're at, you can go ahead and use your S3 from Gremory and Fallen Frey's S3 for more amp. So you can go ahead and one shot. But that's only used as like a one-time trick kind of opponent because the S3 of Fallen Frey's cooldown is kind of long.
Right, yeah, it's like a 22-second cooldown, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and even with Rayhartna reducing the cooldown, it's still like 20 seconds, so that's like 2, maybe even 3 waves away before you're going to even have access to it again in many cases.
Oh yes. So at that point, if you already use this one trick pony, so what do you do next in higher ending clubs is that you want to go ahead and try and manage the boss's a CC bar. If you remember what I just said before, that you're going to be using Glenwith, Rayhartna, Grumry, and your choice of either Mei or Fallen Frey. What people may or may not know is that I believe is Glenwith's S2 Dark, and her S2 Dark increases the stun by 0.5. Now, Glenwith's attack is 10 attacks, so 10 times 0.5, so 5 seconds. As equals to half of all of the bosses' CC bar. So this is where you kind of have to manage it. Because what you want to go ahead and do is you need to use the full combo Grumry, which is her S2, S3, then S1 in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're gonna have to go. You have to go and look at the boss. Hey, is the Lich going to go ahead and do anything? Is the Child of Hellfire going to go ahead and do anything? Is Skavir going to do anything? Is Cataclops do anything? And once again, this kind of comes with experience where, hey, if you know his animation, you're gonna go ahead and knock him down right away because you don't want him to do anything. And as soon as you knock him down, your Grumry S1 will hit hard, and your secondary S1 will hit hard. If the boss does something at the 55-second mark, it will be kind of unfortunate because you'll probably not be able to use your full combo that quickly.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as strategy for survival, there's 2 main strategies used. There's a Morph Ring, and then there's a Super Tank strategy. Which strategy do you think is best suited for a Grumry composition?
Best suited. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you 2 kind of answers. So, best suited as a let's say as a new player, I will highly recommend going for the Morph Ring route. The Morph Ring route will go ahead and allow you to live a certain amount of seconds before falling. Because as a new player, I'm not expecting you to have an A220 a Fallen Frey. I'm not expecting you to have a 10-star Glenwith. So I'm not expecting much at all. So in order for me to see you kind of live somehow, Morph Ring will play a huge part. Now, I've done some research and talking to many friends that hey, what's a good starter build? And most of my friends and I have kind of leans towards that. Hey, at least for tanks, it's very good for you to go ahead and have about give or take about 100k PDEF, 100k MDEF, 1k P block, and 1k M block. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once you go ahead and progress on, so this is where I kind of talk about more of the super high end kind of play. You want to go ahead and ditch the Morph Ring, and you want to go ahead and opt in for more defensive route. I mean, not more defensive route, but more defensive stats on your Glenwith.
Yeah, transition into a super tank method.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Fallen Frey then would be looking for shield increases on a Galgoria set, preferably.
Oh yes,
power
preferably.
Up a shield, and then also using like attack increases, like the 5 attack per wave for 15 waves, provides a substantial increase to Fallen Frey's shield. This would allow Glenwise to be able to tank through many attacks, and then the number of attacks you have to worry about that can hit the back line or enemies that can dive to the back becomes a little less worrisome, since there's certain attacks that give you enough time. So in this case, I would say Grumry, it's recommended to build towards the super tank, but don't be afraid to use the Spirit Morph Ring method until you're able to make that transition.
Yeah, perfectly said.
Excellent. Well, I thank you for your information, Lefty. Was there any last regards you wanted to leave about using Gremory in Eclipse?
One last thing. So based on what I've seen and what I've experienced when using Gremory, my highest so far is 71. And I want to say, for all the players that are listening to this or that are planning to use Gremory as an Eclipse main DPS, is that once you get to around I want to say 60 to 70 mark ish in the waves, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna feel like, hey, you're not gonna feel like you're not gonna be dealing much damage, and just like most heroes, you'll be then gated by artifacts, and some of the main artifacts you're gonna be looking for like an ideal quote unquote Gremory team is Feather Sacrifice, the World Boss Artifact Crown. You're gonna go ahead and preferably use the I think called Heart of the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
And for Gremory herself, she can get away with either a Lulu necklace or the Nail of the Deep of your choice. And of course, since we're talking about artifacts, I don't recommend Lulu's just because it's an event artifact. So.
Well, with the changes to challenge rate, I'd say investment in NPC heroes and event artifacts is now at the best time it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
So for those looking to invest in Eclipse, this is prime opportunity with access to the event artifact selectors. You can now make those investments over time. So that's something I'm gonna cover in the video. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, no problem. But most importantly, thank you for having me, Vermilion.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the information, Lefty. I greatly appreciate it, as I don't personally have first-hand experience with Gremory, so it's very useful to hear from someone who actually has experience and has done fairly well and been extremely successful in his ether acquisition, thanks to Gremory.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, and just hit me up anytime if you need more information.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for listening.
So I'm speaking with Dex from the North American server. He is an experienced Rebel Klaus user in Eclipse, and I'm just going to ask him a few questions on using Rebel Klaus since I don't have first-hand knowledge. So,
hello.
Hi, Dex. So, definitely, I know that Rebel Klaus uses a different comp than some of the other characters. I know that they run Mediana as the third support.
Yes. So
could you explain?
So Medi, of course, she has her S3 that with perk. I believe it was S3 light. It targets 2 units, and the second unit needs to be the highest attack or second highest. Which in that case, I threw in highest attack Glenn to get that second buff onto her. So keeps her front line kind of healthy, well, pretty 5% the base, make sure that no one dies. Paired up with 4 lines of S3 cooldown with a 5-star pocket watch, so that keeps up. Yeah, that keeps up. Along with Rehartna, just to kind of get everything all tightened up. And
do you run a S3 cooldown on Rehartna as well, or?
Yes, yes, I do.
All right, and then Glenn, because she's not too worried about tanking stats, you have a lot of attack on her. Is she running like auras to increase the damage output of the team, or?
Currently, she has, I believe it was 2.5s for 2. Oh yeah, 2.5s and 2 auras, attack and crit damage.
Okay.
So yeah.
Now, as far as skill use on Rebel Klaus, my understanding is that your primary source of damage is going to be S1. Is that correct?
Yes, S1, especially with his U21, gives a what's the additional damage if it is the boss. So most of the time, Eclipse, yeah, right after wave 40, it's all going to be bosses from there. So that does increase his damage from there.
Right, basically when Eclipse matters.
S1 Light, when there's one enemy, which most of the time Eclipse is going to have just one enemy, damage is increased on S1 by 100%, so that also brings up his damage. And that is initially his main source, just to clean up before it skills off and kills everything.
Is there a particular boss you have difficulty with? Or is it like a big threat to your lineup?
In most cases, since Medi is not the since Medi is considered like the highest attack enemy, Skavir, if it gets off the skill, kind of just jumps to the back line. Any AoE that hits backline, so like a Cataclops's jump laser thing, Lynch's, I guess, both his lasers or his like pillar thing, his skills. Those would like hit the backline generally, and that would just decimate the whole run. What else?
I presume
I guess-
Child of Hellfire dispelling and killing your Rebel Klaus.
That too. I forgot about her jump. She doesn't jump to Rebel Klaus. She jumps to Medi.
Oh,
Yeah.
well. I mean, that's sort of good for Rebel Klaus until Medi's...
Yeah, until like the next wave, and then my buffs just
wears
run
off.
out. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing with the Eclipse, because if a party member's dead, as soon as you go into the next wave, any buffs, regardless of their duration, if the character that casted the buff is no longer there, that buff wears off immediately. So you lose the S3 as soon as you go to the next wave.
Yeah, I found that super weird, but hey, you know what?
Yeah, even if it has duration, it's kind of messed up. But another thing I wanted to go over with Rebel Klaus, because of the different lineup usage, because Mediana normally for other main Eclipse DPS, Mediana is not used as part of the A team for Eclipse. She's usually relegated to like a B or even a C team. So what's interesting is that Rebel Klaus allows her to be put into an A team, and that frees up Fallen Frey, OG Frey, and Mei to be used on like your B teams.
Yeah, it does.
That allows some extra ether gains in other spots that some other teams or other main Eclipse DPS may not be able to as easily set up for.
So before Medi, I did use Frey, and just using a skill kind of gives 500. Was it 500 or?
500.
I think it was like 500 penetration for 7 seconds.
Yes.
I had a 5-star. And that frees up some, I guess, runes or like penetration baseline for Rebel Klaus to get ignore defense. So that did help a lot, especially with a shield. But running Medi got super scary at first because Rebel Klaus's skills uses his HP, and with Medi S3 on, his HP is not going to fall below 5%.
Right.
So at first, yeah, it is kind of scary just watching your Rebel Klaus not healing at all. It's like super baseline, like minimal like HP. But yeah, he doesn't die.
Right. So yeah, I find that really interesting. Just being able to free up those other heroes for other comps. If someone was to use Rebel Klaus as say like a B team and they would run Mediana, but their Glenn and Ray Hartnett is obviously on their A team, what heroes do you think would be best to pair with Rebel Klaus for a B team?
Klaus, like Rego Klaus, he got better, especially with his T5 Dark. Naraxis will be another one for like another non-hero damage, as T5 Dark also brings non-hero damage. And I believe it was damage reduction too, if I remember. I need to look. Is it also damage reduction? T5 Dark.
For Naraxis, yes it is.
Yeah, so 15. Other than was it Glenn brings like 20%, which is really nice. Another tank.
What about it in place of Ray Hartnell?
May. Oh, no, sorry, not May. But you can also. You can run like a frontline Rebel Klaus and have 3 backline supporters. That can also be a thing.
Yeah, so if you don't have S3 cooldown for Medi yet, you could obviously run, say, Lavril and Mediana, but then you'll have to make sure that your tank can survive without Mediana.
Yeah, you could also do that too.
What about Isaiah in place of Ray Hartnell? She brings a lot of passive power increases.
She does, but what's also scary is that if you initially S2 right at the beginning of the wave, and she takes, she might take priority because she might be in front. Oh no, she doesn't.
No, she
because
jumps
they
behind.
fixed that with Eclipse. Yeah, they fixed that with Eclipse. That it goes by like Knights, Warriors, and then goes up the classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess Isaiah would be fairly nice. Maybe running a Shack could also be good. Loman for like a S2 shield, amp, and CC. That. Guess that's for tanks. Priest-wise, instead of like Rahardna, of course May. I would love to fit May, but I need that S3 cooldown.
Right.
On your Rahardna to get kind of it tightens up like Medi's S3 cooldowns too.
Yeah, May would of course be great as a replacement to Ray Hartnell on a B team if the May's not being run on the A team. And there's definitely options of that, like the May or the A team can run Fallen Prey and go for the super tank strategy versus the Morphing tank strategy. But it is nice that through careful use of Mediana with the 2 targets, you can basically forego the Morphing entirely.
Yeah, I did that on Glenn.
And then Medi also brings some amp that many other supports don't bring. A lot of people don't realize this, but I'd say amp is actually really strong in Eclipse.
Yeah, like she just needs to get like 1 auto attack and she gives 20% P amp.
Yep.
Just from auto, yeah, from her S4. So yeah, that's
one of her passives. Yep. Yeah, it's all really good. Let's see. I think that's mostly it. I appreciate your information, Dex.
Of course.
For sharing this with the community. I know a lot of people want to push themselves further in Eclipse, and I just wanted to interview some people. I want to make sure that the some of the top Eclipse heroes get represented, and the best information we can share is given.
You're very welcome. Well, my Eclipse only goes up to 76 with Rebel Klaus right now. There's a lot of things I want to play around with, especially with his gear.
Well, 76 is really good. And again, this video is primarily going to be focused on getting people to 60 plus, joining the 60 plus club. So, and I interviewed a Gremory user, got to 71, and so on. So that's kind of where the video's around at the moment.
Nice. Oh,
appreciate the information, Dex. Thank you. Unfortunately, there is no real Rapine users that I can really interview for this, unfortunately. She is fairly strong for Eclipse. Her combination with her brother allows her to delete most of the bosses as they move up in the waves. Does require high investment in both Rapine and Raheat. Their usefulness outside of Eclipse is kind of middling, so it's not really recommended to build them specifically for Eclipse unless you just feel like raising them, honestly, would be my opinion. So I just want to give my thoughts on that. If I had someone to interview, I would love to include it in this, but there's no real Rapine users that are successful in Eclipse on the
or at least in the English-speaking community. I was unable to get a Epis main to interview for this video, sadly. I will give some personal thoughts though, as I have played Epis using a friend's account. She is extremely easy to play, one of the easier heroes to play in Eclipse. She also requires probably lower investment to break into the 60 wave than any other character, I would say. I'm pretty sure an A1 Epis can actually get into 60 plus just by virtue of all the free attacks she gets from her S4. The fact that she has access to infinite mana, double cooldown speed also means that her damage output is fairly high. At least until she gets to the higher waves. She does have the ability to increase her damage output via Soul Weapon, which can allow you to take out a couple bosses, but she does lack the overall on-demand and overtime damage output that Talisha and Celine have access to, and unfortunately that does hold her back. So she has gotten up into the 80s but has fallen down the list. She used to be number 2, but she's around, I believe, 5th at the moment. So still recommended though, just for the ease of play as well as the low investment as far as getting to 60 plus. So if you're looking for someone who doesn't require max investment, you just want to just get your toes into 60 plus just to get some extra gold ethers, Epis could be a good option for you. And I'm not going to go in too much detail on these final 4 heroes that are in the top 10 of the Eclipse. They are fairly good there, and if you have reason to build them for other content, then by all means go ahead and use them and use the appropriate strats with them. For Gladi and Lucikiel, it seems like the Method 3, the Death Protection, is the strongest setup for them at the moment, as that's been getting the highest success. Whereas Krisha and Mirian benefit more from the Method 2 Morphring survival strategy and just trying to kill the enemies as quickly as possible. Just due to the way their cooldown reset mechanics work. They don't have the on-demand damage output that Talisha and Celine have access to. So again, if you're looking to build a character specifically for Eclipse, I would steer away from these characters and go with one of the previous ones mentioned. But if you are interested in using these characters in other content, you are welcome to build them. Just understand that you will likely not go as high as the other contenders.